Hear ye, hear ye. Stay tuned to hear the Clerk of Oxford's tale, aka the original medieval 50 Shades of Grey. The Clerk of Oxford was a scholar at Oxford University and spent all of his time studying. Although it does not say what his place in the social hierarchy was, it can be inferred that he came from a family of at least middle class since he is attending college. But he spends all his money on books and study materials, so he appears poor. The host asks the clerk why he has been so quiet on the trip and asks him to tell a story. The host explains the techniques of telling a good story to the clerk. He thinks that stories should not be boring, there should be no overcomplicated figurative language, and that the storyteller should use plain and direct speaking. However, this warning was unnecessary because the clerk tells his story in an honest method as wholesome as sweet, and the clerk never spoke a word more than was need, and he would gladly learn and gladly teach. But let's get to the good stuff. Here begins the tale of the Clerk of Oxford. Our story takes place in a small town composed of mostly villages and farmers. This town was located in the northwestern side of Italy in a town called Saluzzo. And here is where we meet our medieval Christian Grey. Wanting to spend all of his time hunting and hawking, this bachelor did not want to get married. And his name was Walter, and he was a marquis. However, the town had different plans in mind for him. The town wanted Walter to get married for the reason that, for it should so happen, God forbid, that through your death your line should fail, and that a strange successor should take your heritage. Ah, may woe be us to living. Walter agreed to give up his bachelor ways on the condition that he could choose his own wife, and they set a date for the wedding. Near Walter's palace was a small village where there lived a farmer named Janicula. But Janicula wasn't really important. However, his daughter was, and she becomes our main character because, surprise, surprise, she's hot. And her name was Griselda. She was basically the medieval man's idea of an angel. She didn't drink, she worked hard, she didn't complain, and she was wise, and more importantly, obedient. What? The Marquis sees Griselda and is intrigued, and he plans to wed her. He plans the whole wedding, buys a ring, and has a dress made, without telling her that she's going to be the bride. Griselda hears about the wedding and hopes that she will get a glimpse of the bride when they ride by her village. But really she could just look in the mirror, cause it's gonna be her! She was absolutely shocked when Walter showed up at her door asking for Janicula. And he asked Janicula if he could marry Griselda. Janicula responds to Walter, "Lord, my will is your will, and I wish nothing against your pleasure." So, with his permission, Walter asked Griselda if she would like to marry him. Walter informed Griselda of the conditions that she must follow to marry him. He said, "Are you ready with a good heart to do all I wish, that I may freely cause you to laugh or to grieve as seems best to me, and that you never shall complain about it day or night, and that when I say yes, you will never say no, neither by word nor frowning expression?" Yeah, this is starting to sound like 50 Shades of Grey. But unlike Anastasia, who still had somewhat of a moral compass, Griselda agreed right away to always be obedient to Walter.
Slave for you. Even though she came from poverty, the people absolutely adored her, and people traveled from all over the world to come meet her, and before she knew it, she was pregnant with a baby girl. Even though Walter was really happy that she was pregnant because it meant that she could have more babies in the future, he still decided that he was going to test her steadfastness and her loyalty. He told his wife that the people were unhappy with her, even though that was a bold-faced lie, and he told her that he had to take their baby girl and kill her, and she was okay with this. She didn't even cry. All she asked was if she could kiss her baby one last time, and she rocked, blessed, and kissed the baby, and then handed him back to the crazy, scary-looking murderer. But secretly, Walter didn't actually have the baby killed. He had it sent to his sister to be raised, and he waited for Griselda to say something to him like, "Hey, you jerk, thanks for killing our baby," but she didn't. She never mentioned her daughter ever again. I'm a slave for you. 4 years later, Griselda gets pregnant again, and this time it's a boy. Walter, being the jerk that he is, decided he wasn't done testing his wife, because murdering her first child was not enough. He had to murder her second child. But I guess technically he wasn't actually murdering anybody. He was sending his children to go be with his sister until he was done testing his wife.
When their baby boy turned 2, Walter told Griselda that for the same reasons he was taking their child to have it killed. And yet again, she didn't show any emotion. She just asked to kiss the baby goodbye and that it be buried.
I'm a slave for you.
Walter was quite confused and almost thought that Griselda didn't care about her children because she could give them up so easily.
How could you be so heartless?
But then again, he also just thought that she was the perfect wife.
Hold up.
The clerk interrupts his story to add that he does not think what Walter is doing is fair at all. In fact, he thinks it is quite cruel. He says, but nevertheless he would not stop from his cruel purpose in earnest or in game. His mind was fully set upon testing his wife.
How could you be so heartless?
For his third test, Walter decided to forge divorce papers and ask Griselda to leave the palace and return all of her nice things. Yet again, she agreed to his ridiculous ways without argument.
I'm a slave for you.
Walter tells Griselda that he's marrying someone else, and he also asks his sister to bring his children back to the palace, and he intends to make Griselda believe that her daughter is his new wife. He informs Griselda that his new wife is on the way and that she must return back to her father's house right away. She doesn't argue, and in fact, she says that she thinks he deserves a new love. She gave back all of her nice clothes to Walter that he gave her and returned home practically naked, wearing nothing but the smock that barely fit her that she wore when she first came to the palace. After living at her father's house for a while, Walter eventually requests Griselda's presence back at his palace to help plan his wedding with his new wife, aka daughter, who is 12, by the way. Walter asks that she prepare everything just as he likes, and she goes to work diligently. She talks to the bride, and she tells her how pretty she is, and that she hopes that Walter treats her well. Walter then has the nerve to ask Griselda just how beautiful she thinks his new bride is, and she says very hot. Finally, Walter sees just how loyal Griselda is, and he decides to tell her the truth. He tells her that his new bride is actually their child, and Griselda is not at all disgusted or confused or mad. She's just very happy, and she's so happy that she faints, and they kiss, and they live happily ever after. But did they really? The clerk finished his tale by addressing men to be good to your wives and don't look for a Griselda, and he addressed women by saying, be strong and stand up for your rights. The tale is finished with the host saying, by God's bones, I'd rather my wife at home had heard this story just once than have a barrel of ale. And he obviously missed the complete point of that story. And now to the analysis and the importance of the story. So, what would the moral of the story be? Well, our deadly sin for the clerk's tale is pride. And basically the moral is to not be prideful, but rather accept God's test with humility, just as Griselda did. An example of this is when Griselda is told to return to her home, and she returns all of her nice things and instead goes home and wearing nothing but her old smock and practically naked, and this showcases her humility. An archetypal element is an original model or type after which other similar things are patterned. And our archetypal element in this story is that Griselda represents the universal ideal wife in the medieval time period. She was submissive, beautiful, and obedient, and basically what all men desired. But of course, this is Chaucer's story, so there is some irony involved. The irony of the clerk's tale is that the whole story seems to be about this ideal wife that everyone wanted in that time period, but if you really look at everything she had to go through, you could see that this is not really the way women should be. He wants women, and basically anyone who reads the tale, to realize that you should have humility, but not allow yourself to be taken advantage of. And here ends the tale of the Clerk of Oxford.
Oh